was thinking, like, there are a couple movies in here that I'm going to say that I didn't enjoy watching. We'll get into this later. But the shock, I know. But yeah. I was thinking, like, I'm very excited to, like, talk about these shitty movies with my good friends.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
We make it fun.
Yep. I love it. It makes sitting through some of these all worth it. Because, you know, especially because it's like, look, some of these movies probably haven't been shit on in a long time.
Do a truly public service here.
Exactly. We are heroes. All right. We're making sure they are not forgotten. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Lights, Camera, Accolade. Today, we will be discussing the 9th Academy Awards, which is the year in which the category for Best Supporting Actor and Actress was introduced thanks to last year's winner, Mutiny on the Bounty, where they were just throwing nominations for Best Actor at everyone. Today, we're discussing movies that were made in 1936, so continuing to get through the 30s. I'm Sarah.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Abby.
And that's about all the context I got here. Again, we have a lot of movies to get through here.
I'll tell you guys, like we've been mentioning, the technical progression with each of these movies, just stunning to see in real time. And you're kind of seeing throughout the 30s, I think in particular, just those leaps and bounds each year. So I noticed a lot of that. And some of the movies, I think, even deal with that.
Yes. How is that? And we'll probably get into this when we're talking about the actual movies, but just as a broad takeaway from watching all of the nominees so far, I feel like there are just too many happy endings. I feel like part of it has to be the Hays Code, and then part of it, I'm sure, is due to trying to make people happy during the Great Depression and the recovery of that. But it has really taken away, I feel like, a lot of the substance of the movies. So even the quality has gone up overall. There's not as much variety for things to really stand out for me personally. But.
Well, 36 is just briefly historically. 36 is interesting because it's when FDR, under pressure from Southern Democrats and Republicans, kind of took his foot off the gas of the New Deal a little bit and cut spending, did some austerity, and it threw the country right back into depression right away. So it kind of reeled. So I don't know when that happened in the year off the top of my head, but that was kind of the story of that year. Maybe that has a little bit to do with that, overly optimistic, let's say, attitude of some of these movies in general, where people were thinking, okay, the worst is over. We did a little bit of semi-socialism in the New Deal. Now let's get back to normal and American enterprise. And we went right back into double dip recession. And then it was ultimately the war.
Yeah, that's interesting because I know one of these movies, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, has a star, and the success of the movie and her presence is basically credited with saving Universal Studios from going bankrupt. So I wonder if they just happened to get that hit at the right time when all of that other stuff was backing off so that they didn't go under.
That makes total sense. We'll get to it, but remind us when we get to that movie.
Will do.
Well, especially because that also is probably a reflection of why certain movies get picked, right? Because this ceremony is held in 1937, so they're kind of deciding on these movies tail end of 1936 into 1937. So whenever that went into play in 1936, even though some of these movies were possibly made before it, they were likely chosen as nominees afterwards, right? So it's still kind of a reflection of the times either way.
You start doing the thing where it's like looking at when during the year these movies came out. So in 36, was it a February movie or was it a September movie?
Well, I do put it into chronological order, so I look at the release. So we'll at least get a sense of when they came out, but I did not make a note of exact months. I just know the last one is December. And the first one technically came out in December of the previous year. So they're already breaking their own rules.
I was looking at that. I was like, why does this say 35 on it? Whatever. I think it's right. I'm going to roll with it.
I know. Now it's coming to light that, yes, it's still not fully ironed out. So our first movie came out in 1935, and then the rest were like February, April, July, chronological from there.
Yeah, and the only reason I say this is I know that a while ago there used to be this thing of, and I don't know if it was a joke or based in reality, but sometimes jokes are often based in a little bit of truth, of hold your movie until the end of the year to release it.
Right.
Because people will remember it, right?
Right.
Versus if you release it in February, by the time the Academy is voting on things, everyone's kind of forgotten the movie that they watched. If they watched it back before when it was not required that the Academy actually watch anything.
Which is fucking crazy.
Just a little bit.
That is one interesting thing that I have noticed when I'm putting them in chronological order is it's a pretty even spread per month, because at this point too, studios were just like cranking out as many movies as possible, which I know was a pain point between MGM's Louis B. Mayer and Irving Thalberg, because during the Depression, Louis B. Mayer was like, no, we're still going to do one a week. We're going to release one a week. And Thalberg was like, why don't we put our money into fewer, better movies? And Louis B. Mayer was like, I'm starting to not like you. So it's just like, okay,
this is where we start the conspiracy theory that Louis B. Mayer assassinated Thalberg.
Literally. I'm just like, look, I know he had health issues, but that was really the timing of it. Did you know, allegedly, Louis B. Mayer, when he left Irving Thalberg's funeral, said, like, isn't God good to me?
Oh my God.
Yeah, like the most
Could you
evil...
be a worse human being?
Exactly. I'm like, what a mustache twirling villainous thing to say. Like, obviously people are more complex than just cartoonish villains, but when you say something like that, it's like, okay, well, this is why
that's an inside
like
thought,
that.
Louis B. Mayer.
Very much. He forgot to not vocalize all of his thoughts.
Sometimes you just don't have to say everything in your head.
Look, LB came up on the streets. I think he was like a metal collector or something with his dad, and he was like the ultimate self-made second generation immigrant male in that time period, and the studio system was a brutal one, and he helped create it. And like so many things about our country, and I think this is dealt with really good in that show Deadwood, it oftentimes originated in a kind of cauldron of violence and betrayal and whatnot that gave us our white picket fences in the mid 20th century, built on a lot of suffering.
Oof.
Womp womp.
Well, like we said, there's some good positive ending movies this year, maybe unrealistically. But.
All of them. Yeah.
Well, which is a great segue for our first movie.
Yes.
So our first movie is A Tale of Two Cities, which is based on the Charles Dickens novel of the same name. This story explores the fate of a family before and during the terror of the French Revolution, featuring noble sacrifices, dozens of guillotine deaths, and spectacular compositing. A Tale of Two Cities dares to ask the bold question, how many aristocrats can you execute for killing your child in the street before you become a cackling villain?
I did love that woman character who I wrote down in my notes as the hype hag who had no teeth, and she was hanging out with Madame Defarge, and every time Madame Defarge was doing something nefarious, she'd just belt out that cackle. Oh, she was cool.
Went for it. Like, what a performance. Great work.
Yeah, very much love that. Actual actress who played Madame Defarge, she, the following year, because this is how old this movie is, she played the voice of the evil queen and the hag in Snow White, the cartoon, like the original Disney cartoon. I was like, nice.
This is going to be a thing because we get to talk about Snow White more later.
Oh, okay. I have no more Snow White trivia, so I'm excited to hear.
Thanks for planting that seed.
I've seen it since I was a child, so I'm excited to relive it. But I was going to say, I'm glad you looked that up, because the actress who plays Madame Defarge, I found her to be so like visually compelling, her face and her expressions, that I looked her up a little bit too, but I didn't dig in too deeply. But she had been in the entertainment business for quite a while, if I remember correctly, before she got this role. So you can tell there's like an experience and confidence behind her performance for sure.
Except I do not believe she was actually knitting in those scenes. She was just moving those needles.
Well, for listeners' benefit, a lot of you guys will probably remember, I know I did from middle school, having to read Tale of Two Cities for summer reading or in some capacity in school. And I just have to say, I have a little bit of a gripe after watching this film as an adult with the American education system, because I do not think I was prepared at that point for some of the themes in this movie. And yes, like Abby said, the setting is the French Revolution, and that's something that's kind of timeless and interesting. But what really hit me and affected me, this movie, I would say, affected me kind of on the level of The Champ, was this story of the British lawyer Sidney Carton and his unrequited love for Lucy Monet. Just to lay it out here, kind of brief summary. Lucy Monet lives in England, but she is from France originally. Her father spends 18 years in jail, so she ends up growing up not knowing him. They find out his whereabouts and ultimately get him out of jail. They reconnect, and it's kind of beautiful. But in the course of them getting her, she meets Charles Darnay in France. They fall in love, but he gets into trouble in England because his scheming aristocratic uncle in France implicates him for treason. But he gets out of it with the help of a lawyer character, Sidney Carleton. And Sidney is just this really kind of nihilistic, purposeless lawyer who's very talented, very charismatic, but kind of going through life without any direction. But in meeting this young couple, and specifically in meeting Lucy, he gets kind of a new lease on life because he discovers someone who is very inspiring to him. And sorry, I'm not nailing this. Somebody else jump in.
No, but I think that relationship that he builds and how much he admires, like her especially, ultimately when her husband goes back to France and is swept up in the revolution and gets like, you're going to go to the guillotine. Carton goes and basically like does a switcheroo. So he's the person who goes to his death at the end instead of her husband. I agree with you, Jake. I think that central story is really excellently done. And I think a lot of the credit for that is Ronald Colman is so good. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's just, we've talked a lot about the different acting styles in this period of everyone else is kind of it feels very like traditional and to me like old or kind of like stagey acting. And Coleman feels considerably more natural. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's just certain angles of his face or things he does with his eyebrows, but I was weirdly reminded of some of Robert Downey Jr.'s better performances. Like there's something in there that I'm like, oh, I kind of am seeing this. Obviously, Coleman got there first, so great work, dude.
Great work looking into the future and copying Robert Downey Jr.'s style.
But it's wild how he's like, I don't know. He feels like he's in a completely different movie, but like in a good way and as a way that as something as a modern viewer and as someone who, frankly, I don't love Dickens, could like connect with his performance and that character and kind of his place in it, which you need because when you get to the end of that, you have to be like sympathizing with him or else that ending doesn't stick at all, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, his performance was, I think, what stood out for me. Did not even realize that he was the one who had played Aerosmith in Aerosmith.
Oh, that's crazy. I also didn't realize that.
Years before being cast for this movie, he had reflected on like how much he loved Dickens for his characterization and always loved Sidney Carton specifically. So I think this was like he wanted to knock it out of the park and he really, really did. For me, I think that was the main takeaway for this movie. I do love that kind of central theme, right, of redemption and self-sacrifice. That's all great. But the other performance, like Lucy's performance, but I was just like Arrested Development where they're like, her? Where it's just like
with Michael's son's girlfriend.
It is wild to like have them in a scene together and like her just giving absolutely nothing and Coleman like delivering, but like it still works because he's there. But
100%. But it's just like because it's not about her necessarily, right? It's his story, which is not how I really recall the book, but I think in movie form, because that is the strongest narrative piece of it, I think every adaptation focuses more on Carton. And this might have set the precedent for that just because Ronald Colman's performance was so good. Really loved his performance, but the movie as a whole didn't quite nail certain other things for me.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Sarah. I think the other thing that sells this movie at least made it interesting to watch because I think it feels a little overlong and like some of the performances aren't there. But technically, it's really interesting. It has some fantastic matte paintings. There's a huge sequence of, the peasantry storming the Bastille prison. That is like,
that
cool. You've got a bajillion extras everywhere, which that's not the only scene where they have
17,000.
a billion.
That's a bajillion.
A bajillion. 17,000, a bajillion. That's still crazy. I was looking at it and being like, wow, we used to hire people to make movies. I mean, we didn't pay them very much, but still.
He was like, here's $7 and a sandwich. Go storm the Bastille.
But like that has some really interesting things where it's like you've got this sound stage where you have all your tons of extras and like this ramp up or whatever. And then you've got that composited onto a secondary like section because like the Bastille structure itself is clearly not there, but they have like composited it in. And then you have a couple set houses and then everything else behind it is matte painting. And it's just really fantastically done. Yeah, really impressive in terms of like technically how they are selling scenes and that kind of thing. And I feel like that's kind of a big theme for a lot of these movies this year in terms of what a huge difference technical choices can make in a movie and how it can like really make or break a script, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Just want to redeem myself because I wanted to really hit on
you redeem yourself. Jake's redemption. Jake's Sidney Carton arc.
Yeah, well, the thing that did it for me for Sidney was soon after they meet, he ends up in a church setting with her and he just sees her praying or singing in the church. And you can see in his face, like just his knowing her and his being able to observe her, but most importantly, contribute to her happiness, even if it's not directly in a romantic relationship with her, is so redemptive for him that I just found it very affecting. And it's funny because it's such a tragic ending, that self-sacrifice that you mentioned, but there's like this peace in it. And he's able to give strength to that other woman that he meets who's facing the same fate of being executed. And just that instance of unrequited love, it was very pure to me, the way even if he wasn't able to be the main guy in her life, he knew what was best for her and he was able to contribute to that. And I just thought it was so cool. It made me like genuinely emotional watching it. And I guess that was in the book when we were kids, but I didn't remember then. So it was nice to see it again.
It's been a long time since I read it, but this is like the one Dickens book that I remember distinctly enjoying. But I think part of the main description of both Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay is that they could pass for twins. And so Sidney Carton, as you're saying, you know, he has this unrequited love. It's very much a like, you make me want to be a better man sort of thing, right? But him seeing essentially almost a reflection of himself living the life that he might have had he not ruined his life. And it will not ruined, but gone into like drinking or being given up and just become this person is also very moving to me because it's like, no, I can be better now, but it's tragic that I couldn't have been better then, but now I can do a great thing, you know? So it's like, I really like his character. I like the narrative, but just, the other people they were not as into Dickens as Coleman was, you know?
I do have a last like shout out to a detail that I loved in this movie that did make me laugh really hard. I think it's at the court scene. You know how at sporting events, there's like people walking around with like memorabilia that you can buy? Same thing. There's a guy walking around with tiny guillotines that he's selling. Yeah, and it made me laugh really hard.
It's so dark. It's just like wow.
Gallows humor.
Literal.
I did make a note early on that I was like, it's a real shame that the director doesn't know that this movie is funny. Like halfway through, he seems to realize this is true, and you occasionally get a shot of that, and it's delightful.
Yeah.
Yes, which funnily enough, so Jack Conway was the one who directed this. So he directed, I think, most of Viva Villa, which oof. But then went on for this year, one that we watched, Libeled Lady, which very much is a comedy. So maybe he was like first in the mode of like, all right, I got to make this serious. Then he was like, you know what? No, I'm going to lighten things up a little bit. We're going to have tiny guillotines for sale in this scene.
I think there's something to probably be said about the fact that like the people who get kind of like put into that more comedic role are the, you know, the people who are doing the French Revolution, the peasantry who are rising up against the lords versus you get a lot of like, oh no, these poor aristocrats getting murdered.
Right.
But I still appreciate the tiny guillotine gag.
Same.
I did enjoy the competing kind of Law and Order lawyer speeches at the show trial.
Yes.
That was good.
Elder Patriarch Monet and Madame Defarge. And I think this recurs, you know, we saw it in M, we've seen it here, we've seen in other instances I think at this time of that fear of mob justice, so to speak. And I think that's an obvious parallel to what was going on in Europe and other parts of the world in the 30s.
All right. Are we ready to move on to our next movie? All right. So our next movie is The Story of Louis Pasteur, which is, as you guessed it, a biopic about the man who invented getting surgical instruments really hot before you put them in people. Pod fave Paul Mooney from I'm a Fugitive from the Chain Gang feels sadly wasted as the titular Pasteur. The script mostly cares about the semantics of creating vaccines and proposing that reason will always eventually win the day, but the characters could use an injection, of interiority to make the stakes feel meaningful.
I'm gonna immediately big disagree with you.
Really?
Paul Mooney was great in this. This man has crazy range.
He has crazy range. He has crazy range, but he's like, they don't make him do anything. Like, the character is as thin as cardboard. I hate biopics in this period because everyone's always right. Justice always wins. And no one, like, the characters are always roughly like an inch deep.
Yes, but when you have watched so many old movies where you don't get these great acting performances, even if we don't get that interiority necessarily, just watching his full body language really embodies the characters that he's playing. And it's, it's just incredibly impressive that I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang was just a couple of years ago. And then this comes out. I'm like, I genuinely believe Paul Mooney aged 20 years for this role.
I do agree with that. I think he really inhabits this. What I disagree with is I don't think that he that's all he does. And that's not his fault. I think it's that the script and the movie don't request that he do anything with all of that range. I would love to see him get to do more in this part because the fact that he shows up and sells it and I'm like, that's the same guy is crazy. Yeah. But there's nothing in this movie for him to do, in my opinion.
Okay, so kind of yes, kind of no. So one of my notes in this was, this is basically Aerosmith, the sheep version.
That's true.
But one thing that I learned, because I agree with you in terms of the script, because it's very linear. It's very much like this guy has a theory and he's going to prove it. But like you said, the stakes don't always really feel there, even though some of those story beats are there in the script. The script was originally rejected, I think, by the producer, but Paul Mooney was the one who actually, because he had script control as part of his contract, read the screenplay and was like, I approve it as written. And this script actually, so maybe we're both wrong about, right? But it actually went on to win both best writing for original story and best writing for screenplay.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, okay, so if the script isn't shit, which I will tentatively allow, is I do think that this is a real great example of how kind of extremely boring direction and editing can really tank a movie. Because there are ways to shoot this in a way where you can, because it does have a lot of great moments, right? Of saving the kid from rabies and all that stuff. But it's shot so in such a saccharine kind of style, and is the camera doesn't feel interested in digging into these people in any way. It all just feels very flat, and I think if I can't blame it on the script, I'm gonna blame it on the direction.
Yeah, and I think the cinematography, I would kind of agree with that, where it does feel more like previous. It feels a lot like Aerosmith. No, actually, Aerosmith did a lot of really great things cinematography.
Yeah.
Cinematography.
It reminded me a lot of the thing it did make me think of, and maybe it's because of the fact that it's a biopic, is it did remind me not
Aerosmith. What's the other?
Some of the Arliss movies that are just very static.
Oh, yeah.
Disraeli. This had kind of better Disraeli direction.
Where it's kind of kind of feels static.
It's a low bar.
And it just kind of feels like a lot of one thing happening after another, and there's no real momentum from scene to scene.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt
I could see that.
a little
I'll give you that.
rote. It's a science movie, and sometimes science movies, they hit for me. Sometimes they're a little bit of a drag. But I just want to chime in on your guys' discussion of Paul Mooney here, which I think is a really interesting discussion. You both make great points. And I think what it is in Chain Gang, Mooney is a little bit more naturalistic in his performance, whereas this performance is very intentional and representational. And it goes to show you what is impressive about those two styles of acting, which are both so different, because this one doesn't really call for him to go to like deep emotional places necessarily in the way that Chang Gang did. But man, did I believe, like Sarah said, that he had aged 20 years and that he was this scientist guy.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I remember messaging Sarah about it. I'm like, if you remember, if you're a 90s kid, there was a cartoon called Pinky and the Brain with these two little mice that live in a little cage. And the one mouse is really smart and has a giant brain. And he kind of talks like Paul Mooney in this. And I think that the brain from Pinky and the Brain is based on Louis Pasteur. That's my theory.
Might be.
But yeah, it was a little bit biopic-ish.
Okay, like George Bush.
Right. This is a safe space to be George Bush, everybody.
I don't want to be George Bush.
No.
No one does. Not even him. That's why he makes all those paintings.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that. That was the thing.
All right.
Were you going to make okay. Did you have, where were you? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Sentence forming.
I did like the portrayal of Napoleon III, who is a interesting historical figure, much less impressive than his uncle, but that was kind of cool.
I feel like you just have a Napoleon complex.
In every way.
Okay, I will say, so on the science-y aspect of things, while watching this, and this was one of my early notes, this movie was a very wild reminder that germ theory is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. Where to us, it's just like, wash your hands before you deliver it. What do you mean you're not washing your hands?
Yeah, you have this whole auditorium of crusty old science men just like, he thinks we should wash our instruments? What is he, a barbarian? And I'm just like,
I think they literally call him a menace to science.
Yes.
Meanwhile, like 5 out of 10 mothers dying on the delivery table. I mean, that's the really disturbing side of it, is this closed-mindedness leading to millions of deaths over the centuries. I mean, now, like you say, it's taken for granted, but I can't imagine a world where that wasn't known, but it was relatively recent.
Yeah, not even not known, but like actively ridiculed.
Right.
So the movie ends with what I thought was a great speech by Paul Mooney when they finally do recognize that, like, oh, damn, he was right for real. He did a lot. And his speech was very good, but I really, really wish he had ended it with like, and fuck you to all my doubters. Thank you. I accept my science award.
2 birds back off the stage. The screen fades to black.
The punch bowl was full of rabies.
Exactly. I don't know. I liked this movie personally. I do agree that it was flat overall, but I think Paul Mooney's performance just made it interesting for me. Like, I was pretty plugged in. I did not fall asleep during this one. So
I feel like if it was a half hour shorter or like had any friction in it whatsoever, I'd be down for it. But I don't know.
What do you mean any friction? All these men were like, he thinks little germs will kill you. And then that one doctor injects himself with like rabies, being like, if I die,
which should
then
be
you're
crazy
right.
dramatic, but like
it's a legendary hater move. Like, oh my God.
Like truly, but it's just like, it's like a wet sock that just flops on the ground like when that happens. And I think
that is true.
I think it's
like their gentleman's agreement though at the end, where he's like, all right, look, I know we've had our differences. This is my grandchild being delivered here. Will you do what I ask? He's like, all right, bro. And then in the end, they're like, okay, science trumps all.
Mostly I'm just like the thing with like the bet with the sheep really like got me. I don't know. Maybe it was as easy as that to convince people that the anthrax vaccine worked. However, I do know that like they knew what caused scurvy for years. And then they were just like, nah, that can't be right. We're not going to put citrus on ships for people. It's got to be the air. So it's like, I believe that some people believed it, but like there's no sense of that in the movie of like it being kind of hard to change hearts and minds. It's like you just have to prove it once and then everyone believes you, when it's like that doesn't feel like that's true.
I could see that.
Until the franchise was expanded in the 19th century, when this movie takes place, human life was cheap in the eyes of people in power. I mean, it's not until Pasteur makes the point at that fancy party with the emperor that this woman in your court is going to die in 2 weeks. I'm predicting it when she delivers her baby. And then she does. And that kind of sets off, alarm bells. And that's the brutal reality of how class-based that system was.
Right.
Cannot believe that Louis Pasteur killed that woman to prove his point.
Yeah, she was fine. She's like holding the baby. He climbs through the window.
He's like, I have to do this for science.
Throws germs on her.
That would have been an interesting movie.
Okay. Maybe we need like a remake with a little bit more friction, as
With
Abby
some
says.
spice.
There's actually no need to wash instruments. Just kidding. Please wash your instruments.
And your hands. Like, just wash things. All right. Our next movie is Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, where we have Gary Cooper starring as a small town tuba player who inherits an astronomical sum of money from a distant relative. Despite coming off as a yokel, Deeds spends the movie dodging various attempts from crooks and scoundrels to cheat him out of his fortune and winning the heart of the girl reporter trying to make a fool of him. In large part, a gender-swapped It Happened One Night with good old-fashioned American moralizing slapped on top of it, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town feels like director Frank Capra at his most self-satisfied.
Them's fighting words.
Okay, before Jake fights you, or whoever fights you, I do just want to point out that the opening to this movie was so sudden and rushed. Like, it was literally like you open on this car like swerving and speeding, and then a big car accident, and then the swirling newspapers like this rich dude died, and then they're like, we got to find his heir. That all happened within the first 2 minutes, and I was like, what if you were late to this movie? What if you walked in 5 minutes in, you got your popcorn, and you're like, what is happening? I feel like I missed something really big.
Look, it's like they were marketing it to Zoomers. I mean, if you're going to be on TikTok, you got to grab the attention right away. Okay?
Yeah, I think if you find they actually framed this so you could view it in vertical video mode really easily.
Yes, that's the way it's That's what Capra intended. Another 90s kid reference. A lot of you may remember the late 90s or early 2000s Adam Sandler Mr. Deeds remake.
Oh, yeah.
At least I did, because I just had vivid memories of them singing David Bowie on the plane. So that made me feel good. But this movie was interesting. And I'm surprised you didn't like it, Abby, because to me, it's like...
I didn't say I didn't like it.
Well, but it was a little disrespectful. But this is prime sexy baby. I mean, this is like...
Except he's not a sexy baby. He's secretly very savvy because he's
straight from the mouth of babes. Arguments. Babe, he's not necessarily savvy. He's just saying it like it is.
He's simply autistic coded because the man loves his tuba. He loves a fire truck. I fully watched this man as like, Mr. Deeds, I see you.
Yeah. It's the best when he's finally telling her he loves her and he gives her the poem to read. And then as soon as she's done, he's like, okay, bye-bye. And he runs away and he trips and falls. Come on, that was cute, man. Which that's Capra, though. I mean,
I find Gary Cooper delightful in this movie. I think he's spectacular. I think he's very fun to watch. I think that
Golden Retriever.
Yeah, Golden Retriever. Yeah. I think that his character is really fun and cool. Well, cool. Not cool, but he does like such a great job in this movie of being like immediately sympathetic and really a character that you immediately want to root for. I just don't care for the ending court scene where it's like, he's the most sanest man of us all.
Yeah. That was weird. I think that Capra is obsessed with the idea of like the humble, simple Americana being the right thing. If we could all just get back to what this is really about, we'll be okay. And that was kind of what, they were getting to in that court scene. But in the course of that, he does interesting things, like when he decides to redistribute all of his wealth to all the city's poor and parcel out plots of land to everyone to work and own. Like, that was interesting, I mean, like a synthesis of this arguably conservative traditional notion of America with this very timely 1930s, like, okay, we need to reinvigorate this thing. Whatever we've been doing isn't working.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that Capra has this weird thing of he's very... woo, America, and like the American man and individualism and da-da-da. But at the same time, it's very like, but also like you as an individual have responsible for your community. And there's this like class tension thing, right? Where it's also like poor versus rich, where like, you have this moment of redistributing his wealth, and the reaction from people higher up in society are like, oh my God, he can't. A, he must be insane. B, he has to be stopped because this is going to ruin the economy.
Right.
So it's that weird dichotomy of like, you can't say that Frank Capra's stuff is just like blindly nationalistic in the way that we anticipate it to be. It's more complicated than that, but there's still like that woo America thing happening.
It's a mentality that died a long time ago. Like, we're so divorced from that type of attitude or outlook or idealism. We look at it and we're like, this must be inauthentic in some way. But people really believe
I agree with that.
I think, you know?
Frank Capra is credited with creating that idealistic image of what like America could be, a little bit white picket fence vibes, which obviously was aspirational for a lot of people, but it also didn't reflect the lived reality at the time and
very
necessarily
important point.
The beliefs of people at that time. But I think at a time where he came to prominence during the Depression and post-Depression, it was very impactful for people to see that. So I can see why he became so popular, and I can see, and like his movie, they are just like wholesome. I don't know, there's not too much to have severe gripes with. This movie though, as we're talking about those differences, right, between rich and poor and how it addresses some of those, it did make me laugh a little bit that, you know, his character is very much a like money doesn't make you happy type of person. But then the movie spends a lot of time showing you how fun it is to be rich. So I'm just like getting mixed messages here. But yeah, it was fun, I think, overall. But I agree, the court scene at the end was like,
yeah, it's a little hitting you over the head.
Yeah, it's just it's a little much for me. Like, you don't have to do all that.
I did take a note that there was a little scene where Gary Cooper as Mr. Deeds, like when he's in the house and waiting for someone, there's a statue at the bottom of the stairs, like a female statue, and he tickles her feet. And I'm like, is this a farewell to arms nod? Because he was all about feet in that movie. So I was like, or is this just a Gary Cooper thing? I think it was Gary. No. I think Gary Cooper was just like, oh, those are some nice feet, some nice arches.
I love the string of conspiracy theories we're developing in this episode.
We're noticing things that film historians and biographers
simply
have not
skipped over.
Discovered yet. Yeah, simply skipped over this. Researching, though, I don't know if anyone is familiar with or looked into Lionel Stander. He's the guy who played Cornelius Cobb, kind of the like straight man to Gary Cooper's golden retriever in this movie. We'll definitely get into this more as we get into like the 40s largely and early 50s, but he was a founding member of the Screen Actors Guild, but more importantly, he was part of the first group to be subpoenaed before the House Un-American Activities Committee. And he had some quotes during that honestly like went pretty hard during his testimonies. And I'm going to read one of them because I was just like, damn. Quote, "I know of a group of fanatics who are desperately trying to undermine the Constitution of the United States by depriving artists and others of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without due process of law. I can tell you names and cite instances, and I'm one of the first victims of it. And if you are interested in that, and also a group of ex-fascists and America Firsters and anti-Semites, people who hate everybody, including Negroes, minority groups, and most likely themselves, and these people are engaged in a conspiracy outside all the legal processes to undermine the very fundamental American concepts upon which our entire system of democracy exists." Yeah, obviously we won't see as much of him necessarily moving forward because of the blacklist, but it's just very cool to, you know, find out about these people.
Striking how relevant his words are. Hey.
But anyway, Mr. Deeds.
Yep. Love it. Love that he plays the tuba. My last thing is I do have a note here where, so when he's leaving his hometown and headed to New York City, he is playing in his own marching band like the whole town's turned out for him because everyone loves him because he's such a like affable guy. So there's this big marching band farewell. He's on the train and he is also playing his tuba in the farewell. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, just wholesome content.
Yeah. Stuff. Something that is not wholesome is our next movie.
No, it's not.
All right. So San Francisco stars Clark Gable as Blackie Norton, a fast-talking and morally loose nightclub owner, and Jeanette MacDonald as Mary Blake, the daughter of a Colorado pastor who is a talented singer with aspirations to sing opera. She finds herself working at Blackie's nightclub instead, and the two quickly become embroiled in an on-again, off-again romantic relationship. As Mary struggles to choose between her dream and Blackie, Blackie stubbornly refuses to work on himself at all. But as a strong candidate for potentially the most Hays Code movie to ever Hays Code, their fates are ultimately decided for them. Neither love triangles, city politics, friends centers, or even the titular city can survive the wrath of God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I don't want to tip my hat too early because I want to talk more about this with another movie lately, but it'll come up in a few. But I do think this is a real Empire Strikes Back moment and a direct answer to some of the more progressive and thought-provoking movies we saw earlier in terms of the gender dynamics here.
Yeah.
Just the way Jeanette MacDonald is treated throughout the movie, she has no agency. She is like a piece of property to be traded between two men, and decisions are made for her. And even the White Knight character, Spencer Tracy, who I love and he's great and everything. She's about to go on to perform. He bundles into the room and says to her lover / fiance / manager, you're going to let her go out and perform in an outfit like that? And the two of them get into fisticuffs. Meanwhile, no one asks her whether she, number one, wants to perform there, what she wants to wear for her performance, what she wants to sing, and where she sees her career going, or even who she really wants to marry. So it was dark. The whole sequence with Clark Gable ultimately wooing her, where the conversation starts, she's still reluctant, and it ends in the front of the window, and she's like putty in his hands. I think she says maybe 2 words in a 5-minute scene. It's just a deluge of, I don't want to call it emotional manipulation. And it's just like, she doesn't stand a chance. It's rough to watch.
Yeah.
Really controlling relationships just all around. Yeah.
But it takes place in San Francisco.
It sure does. And other than the whole, I will say so at the end of the movie, there's this huge earthquake sequence. Spectacular practical effects of buildings are coming down, just sprays of what I hope is foam brick, people getting buried, brick facades, stripping down and burying, carts being pulled by horses. And then they also have things where I guess historically, because the water main broke and they couldn't get water to put out the fires, they demoed a bunch of the city to essentially put out the fires that way. And just, you posted a picture of it, Sarah, just flatten San Francisco, basically.
80% of San Francisco was
crazy.
Destroyed during that, which is absolutely insane.
And that whole sequence is pretty dang wild. Clark Gable kind of trudging around in his dusty suit with the leg of his trousers half torn is great visually. That whole sequence is pretty stunning and spectacular, but it is definitely it's a real shame everyone sinned so hard and we had to earthquake them off the face of the earth. And then the end is very much so preachy and weird and kind of let's go rebuild our white city on the hill.
Very end, it's like a
glory, glory, hallelujah. So San Francisco famously had a really diverse population, had a big population of Asian Americans at the time, which of course are nowhere on screen here. All I could think of during the last sequence as this whole camp of survivors is singing glory, glory, hallelujah and marching back to the desolate grounds of San Francisco, presumably to rebuild their lives in a more holy way, is a bunch of Asian Americans standing to the side being what the fuck?
Yeah, one of my notes was did everyone practice this beforehand? How did everyone...
did I miss a note here?
Yeah, I was oh my God, I missed that rehearsal. I did not know the whole city was going to come together and sing this song together. So definitely agree with all of that. They make an early point in the film for Clark Gable's character to be pretty atheistic, right? And so he's very anti-religion in a lot of ways and stuff. And so after the earthquake, I was oh no, this man's about to just convert and this is going to be the moral lesson of this movie. And yeah, once he finds Jeanette MacDonald and is so thankful that she's alive and singing her opera to these children, because of course Big Opera paid for more attempts this year. Yeah. He talks to Spencer Tracy's character, who's a priest, and he's just basically, you gotta pray. And then Clark Gable's damn, I don't know how. And Spencer Tracy's you'll find the words. And there's this whole sequence of him getting down on his knees and praying. And it's okay, it's not to say that big, scary, traumatic moments can't affect people and move them in a way that is just wow, I want, this feels like a miracle. I want to believe in something. But because Hays Code so strong this year, it was wow, this whole movie was literally leading to this moment, as you guys are saying, where it's showing how sinful and crazy the whole city is. And that's why the very real earthquake that actually decimated this city and killed a lot of people.
Because of science,
that's why
God.
Because of Clark Gable specifically needing to convert.
Damn it, Clark.
So yeah, it just felt not great. Originally, it felt like I was saying this was like the original Remember Me. Did you ever see that Robert Pattinson movie?
I sure did.
I remember.
I in fact watched that on the date in question last year.
Oh yeah, because. Yeah, to be extra respectful. So that one, it's more like a twist ending versus this one, as you guys are saying, it just felt like, oh no, they're using this tragedy to really push whatever narrative by showing the 80% of what we spend time in. But just to give people a perspective about that earthquake and how terrible, as we mentioned, 80% of San Francisco was destroyed. The official death toll from that is around 700, but scholars think that it was probably more than 3,000 people. And on top of that, even though the city was rebuilt fairly quickly, it was something between 230,000 and 300,000 people who were left homeless during this time out of a population of 400,000. So like more than half. It was huge. So the fact that they used this, which happened in 1906, not that far before this movie, actually, one of our directors lived in San Francisco as a child when it happened. Yeah, so I'd have to like check my notes to remember who that is. I'm sure it'll come up later because I'll find that note. Should have been in this section. But yeah, it was so recent. And so it's kind of gross to me that they're using it just for that.
Yeah. They do shit like that nowadays all the time.
It's true.
Yeah, they do. They do. That
I
is
do
true.
think if I wanted to be like super extra insidious about like how this is moralizing, there's this whole thing where Mary Blake, the like opera singer character, goes to talk to her kind of like the rival love interest who has helped her get into the opera. She goes to go talk to his mom. She's hesitating to marry him. And she basically has this whole thing of like, I'm glad that I settled for this. Like, look at even my neighbors here in this fancy part of the city party all night long and are immoral. And after the earthquake, we see that woman again and they are dynamiting her house. And it's this weird thing of like, see, even if you are kind of like a moral, upstanding person in this like habitat, like surrounded by people who are not, that will also destroy your livelihood as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point.
All right. Do we have anything else to say about San Francisco? Oh, actually, I do. One last thing is, so there's a big sequence with like a opera section where Blackie Norton goes to go see Mary like perform in the opera and realizes, oh, she's really great. This does not lead to him thinking that she should stay in the opera. But that whole sequence really reminded me of that other opera movie that we watched, which I have already literally forgotten the name of yet again.
One Night with You.
There we go.
One Night of Love? One Night with You?
I don't know. Whatever. Basically, it tells the entire story of that movie in roughly 5 minutes. And also, I did make a note that was just, I would actually really love to see just the movie version of this opera because it is staged in a crazy way.
Yeah.
Like those sequences look amazing. But yeah, that's all I have.
Big opera. They're winning. They're converting.
They put a lot of money in.
Yeah.
Like,
I tried to look it up to see if opera had like, if it was just actually wildly popular during this time. And it has just like, I don't know, maybe fallen off radically. But I couldn't find any information about it being like a bigger thing then than it is now. But it does seem weird to me that so many movies that we've watched have so much opera involved in them. But I don't know if that's just because opera is a big sound thing and movies are at this time are kind of like obsessed with the concept of exactly, it's a showcase for sound, right? And kind of like moving into musicals, and there's kind of some crossover there, even though I think there are probably people who would be like, Abby, how dare you say that? So I don't know, but I couldn't find any information about like big opera having more of a hold on like the cultural consciousness in the 30s than I would expect it to now, but there is quite a lot of
I think your
opera.
theory makes sense, but I like to think that Mr. Opera himself is putting a lot of money into producing these movies.
Yet another conspiracy theory that I'm loving that we're developing here.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to talk about the next movie?
Oh, boy, am I.
All right. So Anthony Adverse stars Friedrich March, we've seen before in a number of movies, as the titular Anthony, a guy born into allegedly adverse but honestly pretty okay circumstances, abandoned at a convent where he is raised by kind nuns, then apprenticed to a merchantman who recognizes him as his long-lost grandchild and loves him like he is, even if he doesn't acknowledge him outright. Anthony wins himself a lifelong childhood sweetheart who he'll do anything to reunite with when they're separated, except stop doing slave trading for many, many, many years.
Oh, man. This
movie made me consider the possibility that we really need to maybe not have a whole episode about it, but so we've got that episode where we do like our top 5. We should have a side ranking that we just announce where it's like the worst movie that we've watched.
I love this.
I don't know that this is it, despite like the aforementioned many, many years of slave trading, but it is certainly an excellent candidate, and it did make me think of this fact.
This idea is going to happen now because I already got a top 3 right off the top of my head from that.
See, that's kind of where I was too. I was like, I already know movies I want to nominate for this.
Yes.
Readying my cavalcade defense again.
While I was watching this movie, I was like, damn, this should have been the year that the Razzies were established because this would have been a good candidate for that. So it was based on, there was apparently like a novel series, Anthony Adverse, about his life. And so there are 9 books in that series. This condenses 8 of the 9, and I'm like, at that point, just finish it.
It leaves off the one where he goes back to Mexico and dies. Like, that's basically all it does.
It's absolutely wild. Like, my thoughts are all over the place from this movie because any aspect of it, I'm like, I am ready to discuss what this
My notes for this movie look like a descent into slow madness. It's like, it starts with like, ooh, the Marquise is kind of cool. I like his voice, and sword fighting's fun. And then like, okay, we're going to Cuba. It's a little problematic, starting to talk about slavery. Then just lines of like, what the fuck? What are you doing, Anthony? Go home. No one's making you do this. It just goes off the rails.
So I watched this with my roommate, and at one point in the middle of like, the Anthony Adverse really suffers while trading slaves sequence, she was like,
stop making me do this.
Stop making me do this. She was like, I don't understand. So the movie is telling us that he wants power and money. Like, that's what he's been swayed by. But he has no reason to want those things. Like, other than the fact that
Africa made him want them.
But there's nothing to motivate his entire involvement in in literally the slave trade. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. Completely unhinged movie.
Absolutely. My very, very first note is just like, wow, there's no silence in this score ever. Just music from top to bottom. So before we get into like specific aspects or details of the film, I do kind of want to let you know what this film was nominated for to give you an idea of what the Academy thought at the time. So we've got, obviously it was nominated for Best Picture, tragically did not win, but it was nominated for our very first Best Actress in a Supporting Role, and she won. So Gail Sondergaard as Faith, who we'll get into, but she is so cartoonishly villainous, and we'll get into one of my favorite sequences. No, she really didn't, but she won Best Music Scoring, and they won for that too. So once again,
much like editing for Bohemian Rhapsody, they won it because they did the most.
They did the most. There was like, we're gonna have no silence in this whatsoever. Best Art Direction did not win that one. However, it did win Best Cinematography, Tony Gaudio.
No, we should stop the Oscars. We should end this podcast.
We need to throw them all away. But I'm not done. I'm not finished. It got nominated for Best Film Editing, and it won for this one as well. Yes, it did. It really did, which is absolutely wild.
So look, we wished for Film Editing Oscar, and now we're taking it back.
Take this award away. Ralph Dawson, I am sorry, but...
Okay, so you know how earlier in the podcast recording, I said that I was not a fan of Charles Dickens. And mostly my gripe with Charles Dickens, maybe like, an axe sharpened from childhood, is that so many of his stories, especially his novels, are about like a singular protagonist. I actually think this is my problem with a lot of biopic movies as well.
Sure, yeah.
And they're like, I'm going to tell you literally everything that happened from birth to death. And this movie made me appreciate briefly Charles Dickens as maybe like actually like a pretty good alternative if this was like a thing that we were reading, because not only does this give us from birth to death, but it also gives us roughly 20 minutes that was like before he was born.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a devil's advocate. That was my favorite part. Like the first 20 minutes to half hour,
sure,
I thought was kind of cool. Like I mean, like the love tryst. Like I said before, I thought the Marquise was like so over the top, but in a good way. And
it doesn't work for me, but like I can see the appeal, but I'm just like, even if you have to do this to like show the setup of like, you know, how he ended up in an orphanage and how he eventually gets back to his grandfather and blah, blah, blah. And like all the stuff with the Marquis later, whatever. But you can do that in like 2 scenes.
Yeah.
Also, like, how old was the Marquis by the end? Seems like he was like 50 in the beginning.
Well, everyone smoked cigarettes and only ate red meat. So
that's true. He could have been 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tragic that he was not nominated, but there was one final nomination.
Oh my God, no.
Which was, we're not fucking, this was the most
Sarah's like, if y'all are done.
If you're all done, we got one more to announce. Play the music, wrap the speeches up. Best assistant director, William Cannon, did not win. So
I'm glad we know that.
Most nominated movie of this year. So clearly we're crazy for not loving this masterpiece.
Burn the whole place down.
Is my takeaway.
Gotta give props to Olivia de Havilland, who seems to be on a run, though. I'm not saying she was like great acting wise in this movie, but I think she's very beautiful. And
I'm glad she's having her moment. I mostly know her from Gone with the Wind, where she annoyed me a little bit more. So I'm glad to see her other roles where she has more personality and life to her. I don't mean to interrupt you if you had more to say about her, but there was one scene that I loved that she did.
No, go ahead. Yeah, we're on Olivia time now.
So obviously she's Anthony Adverse's love interest, and they kind of loosely grow up together and stuff and have a little bit of a romance there. So there's a scene where they are like riding through town in a carriage together.
Yes,
and they're obviously
like
being very flirty and, you know, very cute and stuff. And then so he essentially, I think he like leans in to kiss her, and we have the most extreme swerve of all time topic change. She's like, not on this road, let's sing. And then she bursts out in opera. This is the wildest movie I've ever seen.
Movies are funny.
So good.
That Hays Code.
I cannot believe that this was not intentionally a comedy. There were so many comedic moments that made me laugh. Like, so speaking of the Marquis,
laugh.
Do y'all remember the scene when he is just, yes, the laugh. Exactly. Yes, I'm so glad you remember, but he's being nefarious. And then he has like the most cartoonish evil cackle of all time. And the henchman looks over at him like, oh my God, sir, you're evil. And then the Marquis laughs evilly more. And then the henchman starts laughing with him. And I was like, come on, this is comedy gold.
Sitting in the director's chair behind the camera, just eating Cheetos. He's like, louder, more.
He's like,
more.
Louder, yeah, more.
More.
Which the director for this movie, so it was this director who was 5 years old in San Francisco when the earthquake happened. So Mervyn LeRoy. Yeah.
This is his punishment.
I was like,
that
this explains something.
His brain was shaken. But no, so okay, that was where my thoughts went first as well. But then I saw his filmography and I was like, wow, okay, so this was like, how was this movie so bad when this man was involved? Because do you want to know the two movies that we've seen that he's directed so far?
I'm scared. Don't detract from them.
I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang.
Okay.
And 5-Star Final.
Whoa.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. What? Shut up, Jake. And yeah, so he, like the rest of his filmography, honestly just gets more impressive over time as well. So I don't know.
Look, we all trip sometimes. So.
Let me put it this way.
Exactly. Don't hold it against
I will
him.
say, this is definitely a movie, which is like your tagline when we watch a movie that's like batshit or not good, or like, this is a movie. Every scene you're going to be like, wow, what the fuck? Like, and you're going to, at the end of it, you're going to be a little exhausted, but you'll have had an experience. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great time to bring up Nolita. I don't know if you guys remember her, but can someone tell me what race she is supposed to be?
She was supposed to be African.
I thought that maybe he brought her from Cuba.
No. She's
No.
supposed to be a native of Africa where he's engaging in the slave trade.
And she's the one that's one of the factors forcing him to continue to do slavery. Is a native at great. Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was
you were
correct.
Yeah, what an interesting movie.
Yeah, which, again, thanks to Mervyn LeRoy for giving us so much content to dissect in this episode. So going back to Gail Sondergaard, the one who won for Best Actress here is Faith. So you guys said that she didn't really do much in this movie, but I beg to differ. Because
she was a delightful cackling.
Yes. So one of my favorite scenes that I took notes on. So I don't know if you guys ever watched, there was like an older cartoon, Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I know.
Yes.
Oh,
my God.
I know
that is them.
Yes.
That's them. Yeah.
That's literally them. So there's a scene in which, they're trying to kill off Anthony Adverse. And so
they can inherit the grandpa's money. Make sure everybody understands.
Yes, exactly.
Frankly, rooting for them.
Honestly,
at that point,
please end all of our misery. Can you imagine if that's where the movie ended? That would have made my top 5 right there.
Been very interesting.
But so they're trying, so they have this nefarious plot. They want to get rid of Anthony Adverse. And so they get their henchman who had previously cackled, with the Marquis, to agree to drive Anthony's carriage off the road because they know that he's going to be traveling along it. And so there's like this very, quote unquote, dramatic sequence of the carriages fighting for room on this road that's like on a cliff face, but then Anthony outsmarts them. And so the driver ends up driving over the cliff. Meanwhile, to all of this, Faith and the Marquis are watching from behind a rock.
How did they get home?
It is so cartoon. That's a good, and they were just like, oh, damn. And that was my favorite henchman.
Yeah, he says, literally.
He's a while. I think so, yeah. So, honestly, this movie was delightful. This was one of the ones where I'm like, I need to find contemporary reviews to understand what people thought at the time. And so I found one that was like, it's kind of bloated, but well-rounded. I was like, no, this is boring, crazy. So I found one from Graham Greene, who I know becomes a novelist later, but at this point he was writing for like a British journal, The Spectator. And I actually loved his review for this, and I kind of want to read it. So he said, Anthony Adverse goes on too long, otherwise it might have been the funniest film since The Crusades. The Crusades, also not a comedy. This movie, not a comedy. So I'm already like, okay, Graham, I'm with you so far. He said, its lyrical captions take over from the old silent days. Thus an unwanted child was given a name, and for 10 years heard it spoken only by the good sisters and his kindly teacher, Father Xavier. Also, the sexual chronology is curious. I'm still puzzled by the dreadful child in an Eton jacket who was waiting unexpectedly to call Anthony father at the end of his wanderings, because Anthony, who married his wife secretly one morning, mislaid her before noon and only saw her again after 7 years. A fishy situation which perhaps our film censors have unduly obscured. Yeah. But most I welcomed our old friend Pedro de Cordoba with his weaving tortoise head, who crops up in odd, unexplained ways in Havana and West Africa wearing a cowl. This is the priest, by the way. Mm-hmm. And who dies at last on his back in the mud, his flippers feebly waving, his odd receding mouth opening and shutting. A masterfully interpretation of Miss Potter's Ptolemy tortoise. That was his fucking review of this movie. And I was like, I love you, Graham Greene. This is so good. Love
Amazing.
All of that. I just love the description. The dreadful child in an Eton jacket. I also was like, okay, that's something we didn't touch on, where I'm just like, okay, you guys were married for less than a day before you went off to Africa.
I started doing math.
Excuse me for using the wrong...
This might be Napoleon's child.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, this is the most cucked man in the universe. You got to just end it there. Like, I can't believe he went off and brought that little dirty brat to America and was like, all right, I guess you're my son now. Like, no fucking way.
That's the ending, especially because, like, he finds out that Olivia de Havilland's character has been Napoleon's mistress during this whole time. And then, so he's, like, heartbroken. He goes to their home.
Did he steal this child?
Alleged... No, because he sees their alleged child, and then there's a letter left by Olivia de Havilland.
Olivia made out like a fucking bandit.
Exactly. She's like, hey, so by now you've probably found out that I'm Napoleon's mistress, and I think that you would actually be a much better parent, so take our son with you to America. Goodbye. I'm just like, what is this movie?
unhinged
really
movie.
agree with Graham Greene here. So
Yeah,
those were all my thoughts. I know it's a lot of thoughts, but what a movie.
Crazy. Well, are we ready for our next movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Another adaptation of a timeless classic. Romeo and Juliet is an adaptation of the Shakespeare play of the same name. It stars Leslie Howard and Norma Shearer as pretty drastically too old Romeo and Juliet. Casting issues aside, this frankly won't be the last time Shakespeare adaptations decide to cast a 40-year-old man as an impetuous teen. This is a pretty accessible and lavish, if too long, adaptation. It's not afraid of indulging kind of like in the fantastic. It has a bunch of strange and whimsical costumes and set design while it tragically star-crosses its adult teen lovers.
I just have one praise to say, Edna May Oliver. You know, I always love her when I see her. She plays the nurse. We all know and love the nurse from Romeo and Juliet, but we've seen her in so many movies now, and the fact that she didn't win the first Best Supporting Actress
that's
Oscar instead of that schmuck in the last one, that's frustrating. So she's a bright spot.
She was not even nominated.
Yeah, that's sick. But Mercutio and Tybalt remain basically the only fun parts in this play. I don't know. Shakespeare skeptic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's serviceable. It's fine. I think it passes the bar for me for a Shakespeare adaptation where like everyone clearly knows what they're saying and in a way that is like an audience member can understand it, even if they're not necessarily following like every word and that kind of thing and picking up on all the like words.
Some of us try.
No, it's a hard thing to do, right? So everyone's kind of clearing that bar. I will say I was kind of dreading this because as much as I like Norma Shearer, she has some habits, especially with like melodrama, where I was like, oh, she's gonna like put too much pepper on this.
Dialogue is an excuse to do the breathy shit.
Yeah, and I actually think I have a problem with her performance where it kind of goes the opposite direction of like I think she's still doing too much, but she's at the same time somehow managing to do nothing at all. Like speaking of interiority of characters, there's like nothing happening with her performance in terms of at least not until later but like when we first meet Juliet, she's just like in a smiling daydream, gauzily wafting across the screen, and like all of the wordplay is kind of like really dampened down. I still think that she knows that what she's saying, but it doesn't like hit.
Okay, well, counter to that, she's the only Juliet that's ever received an Academy Award nomination for the performance of Juliet. So our queen stays on top. All right. But no, I do agree with you. It just really hurts to say because I love her so much.
Yeah, I do love, though, I think the costumes in this are like, they're fucking crazy, but I love them.
I love John Barrymore's drinker's gut. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but he's like tight as hell everywhere else. He's just got this little pop belly. I'm like, I've been there, John. I know what you've out there. And also the fact that he's like in his mid 40s.
Right. Everyone is like way too old, which is so funny. But like
Verona at the time, youth started at 35. So,
but yeah, I don't know. I love how this movie looks.
The lighting was impeccable.
Yeah,
like lighting and stuff normally is a little bit lost on me. Same with a lot of subtle cinematography things. But this one, I was like, man, these scenes are lit beautifully. Like it just looks so good.
Yeah.
There were several black extras, which I appreciated because historically there, it's oftentimes lost on people that there were different races and it's at that time.
Yeah, it's a thing that feels rare even in a modern adaptation of like, I don't like, they're not great roles or anything, but like just having people on the screen kind of is like an intentional choice.
Yeah. So Irving Thalberg, MGM's kind of Wonder Boy, who we've mentioned, this was the movie that he most wanted to make throughout his career. And he spent like 5 years trying to convince Louis B. Mayer to do an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. And it wasn't until A Midsummer Night's Dream, which we watched last year, that one got made where Louis B. Mayer was like, oh, we can't be outdone. Yeah, let's do the Shakespeare thing. So he finally got the green light to do it. And he hired in like Shakespeare experts. He really wanted to do it right in a way that like honored Shakespeare. But sadly, he actually died the night of the premiere of this movie.
Oh, that's
which
crazy.
Is really sad. So yeah, died very young.
Poignant, but at least he got to see
at least
his dream a reality. I guess we kind of have to like it.
Yeah, we have to like it because this man died for this movie. Literally, Louis B. Mayer was like, you got what you wanted. Now it's time. That's it.
Now assassinate him.
Exactly. But one other note, because I don't know if you guys remember, well, Abby hadn't joined us yet for this, for our favorite movie, Hollywood Review in 1929. There's a sequence in there. The only sequence that I actually liked in Hollywood Review. Yeah, they do we'll call it a behind the scenes of Romeo and Juliet. And Norma Shearer actually was playing Juliet in that. And then it's very modern, right? So they do the balcony scene and then it's cut. And then you just have them speaking in normal, 20s dialogue and be like, I didn't really like that take. And just very much behind the glimpse. And that was super fun.
And it was colorized.
So it was fun to see her. And it was colorized. Yeah. So she technically reprised her role as Juliet. But that was my last little bit of trivia. It looked good. It was Shakespeare.
90s version, baby. All day, every day.
That Mercutio is so good. All right. So our next movie is Dodsworth, which explores the slow dissolution of a marriage. When recently retired Sam and his wife Fran, who is younger than he is, but growing old, take a European vacation looking to finally enjoy life and discover themselves, they find more than they bargained for. Sam finds adventure that his wife isn't interested in, and Fran finds other men. Exceptional direction, along with script and performances that are unafraid to kind of grapple with how messy the end of a 20-year marriage really can be. This really kind of successfully distinguishes Dodsworth from being kind of yet another divorce movie, which we've seen a lot of. Mm-hmm. I think the direction of this movie is crazy good.
Yeah.
It won for Best Art Direction.
Good. There's something that happens in this movie that blows me away, and I don't actually know how they managed to do this. I don't quite understand exactly how sound was being done at the same time. I know it was concurrent, but how they were recording it and that kind of thing. But there is a scene kind of towards the middle of the movie where they've kind of separated ways at this point because there comes a point where she's like, you go home, I need to go have my adventure. And he lets that happen. And she's in a Swiss chalet, she's with her friends / her lover on a terrace balcony, and they're having this conversation. It's clearly a set because all the trees are fake and that kind of thing. But they have made the choice to blow wind through the scene. And so all the trees are moving, and she's wearing this kind of light scarf that is just constantly billowing. And there's a thing that happens with a letter at the end where they light it on fire and it blows away. And it's just the entire dynamic of that feels so active and real in a way, but kind of strange because it is clearly a set. But it's just so interesting. And I don't know how they did it because they must have had a huge fucking fan blowing on set and they're still recording dialogue. I don't know. But it was a great choice. It looks amazing.
How does it happen that we have so many movies that when we're watching them, it really does feel like you're going back in time and you're suspending your disbelief? And then you have a movie like this, which to me is the patriarchy's direct answer to the divorcee. I'll explain more maybe in a second. But it just feels so authentic, the exchanges between the husband and wife throughout. And it feels so timeless and compelling. And there was one point they are buttressing arguments to one another in a way that feels very human and real, if you've ever been in a relationship before.
Yeah.
And it was just so gripping to watch. And when I say I think it's a direct response to the divorcee I loved, as we all did. It made me very uncomfortable because it deals with the messiness of that decision-making process when people are unfaithful and how to grapple with that. This one presented a somewhat similar chain of events, but with the idea that one party to the situation is totally faultless and in fact almost like a sainted figure. And it just so happens that in this case, that sainted figure is the male character. So to me, it felt like a reassertion of, play by the book, do the right thing, and it's going to work out for you. And look what happens when you deviate. Fran, you're going to end up alone, sad, and unsatisfied with your life, and it's all your fault. And in the context of the story, that's true, in my opinion, but it's saying a lot about how the filmmakers were viewing those types of scenarios.
I can agree with that, and I think it says a lot in terms of culturally where it's placed. And I do think you're probably right. It feels kind of harshly one-sided, even though I feel like, and maybe it's her performance. And I think, and I didn't look up the actress's name.
Ruth Chatterton.
First and foremost, before I forget, she wears a lot of backless dresses in this, and her back is amazing.
Yeah.
She's gorgeous.
Like her performance is so excellent, and I really kind of like sympathize with her, and maybe it's just I'm watching at the right time or something like that. But I think like you can really see her kind of putting the texture in there of like, this is a woman who probably married very young. And then was stuck in this little town and has never really kind of lived and is now trying to like reclaim her youth because she's frightened that she's kind of like missed all of that. And it doesn't make her a nice person. And in fact, it kind of turns her into a really shitty person, especially to her husband.
Right.
But like at the same time, like her husband was also kind of like, not kind of like enabling her, even when they went on that vacation to go have their adventure. Like, you know, he was leaving her. He was like, I don't really want to get dressed for dinner. I'm going to go.
The years were showing.
Like,
I want to go see the lighthouse.
I want to go see the lighthouse instead of dancing with you, like that kind of thing. So it's like, I do think it is vastly weighted to Sam's character being justified, but there's so much interesting texture in the script. And it, like you were saying, Jake, it has that like realism to it that it still works for me, even though I can totally see what you're saying.
I'm so sad they went Hays Code at the end because they make her into a caricature. Like that last scene, it was just like, okay, you took something that was very interesting, like 3/4 of the movie, and now you're doing something stupid. And it made me mad, like, because I was really like engaged when they were debating how to handle what they were going through. But that decision to make her a narcissist was kind of boring.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with your initial points. The way that I liked this in comparison to the divorcee is this is a reflection right after 20 years of marriage versus the divorcee was pretty early on.
Yeah.
Right. So after 20 years, you know, you're not necessarily going to see the character change anymore, right? They've kind of like revealed who they are. So I'm mixed. Like, I don't like how, we'll call it villainous she was at the end, but I think there is a certain amount even there of some realism of like, okay, he's gone back to her, kind of back to the status quo, and she's trying to treat it as it always has been, almost desperately, right? And so, that's just how she is. I attributed a lot of those same things to the Hays Code, but I actually found out that apparently the director, William Wyler, wanted to have more subtlety to Ruth Chatterton's character. He was like, oh, this is maybe a little bit too black and white, but it was actually her who disagreed with that. And they would get into arguments on the set about how to like portray this character.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is super interesting to me. And the actress who played Edith, the one who becomes, you know, the love interest in the end.
Mary Astor.
Yeah, Mary Astor. So she wrote in her memoir that Ruth Chatterton, because Ruth Chatterton was 43 at this time. She does not look 43, first of all. Like,
great.
It's wild. But she wrote in her memoir was that like, well, Chatterton's character in this movie is, quote, that of a woman trying to hang on to her youth. And that's exactly what Ruth herself was doing. So it touched a nerve. And so I think, oddly, like, I think a lot of that texture and realism might even come from like resonating with that character, with that story.
Casting the right person for the right job.
Yeah, really, truly.
It was a great performance. She knocked it out of I think that Mr. Houston, which we should mention, he's the patriarch and founder of the Houston acting dynasty. John Houston, Angelica Houston, Danny Houston. This is their pop-pop as
their pop-pop.
pop-pop as the titular role here, the husband. He does a fine job, but it's on her shoulders, I think, this movie.
Yeah.
And you're kind of along for the ride of her navigating these feelings that she has. And that's why I'm frustrated, because in the beginning, you can see the doubt and the guilt that she has. But by the end, she's so wrapped up in just the sensuality of every experience, one into the other. It's almost like she's lost her humanity. And at that point, I just have to throw my lot in with Sam and say, get the fuck off that boat. You know, you can't get off quick enough, you know?
Yeah. I constantly am finding myself in this trap of having to watch a million movies all in the same day. because I just run out of time and I'm not very prepared. But this was such a breath of fresh air in terms of like how it looks visually, how it's cut together, and like the script and the performances, because everything feels like it's really working together, where it's not like, okay, this is fine, but it's a half hour too long or whatever. And I was pleasantly surprised by it because, I was like, okay, 2-hour 1930s melodrama about divorce. I've seen this movie a bajillion times now. Right, sure. But yeah, just, I don't know, lots of little touches, like Jake, you were saying about how real their relationship feels. I think this is the first time that we see a wife character get naked in front of her husband. And it's played very, very casually. Like she has her back to the camera and like is like stripping down to like change into her bedclothes and like starts to take her dress off, and you briefly see her back, and like he's talking to her so he can see her, but it's not played as like, ooh, a woman's getting naked. It's fully like they've done this 100 times. The camera does pan off to the side, like to push her off frame as she continues to get naked. But like they keep having that conversation. And then it does the same thing with him, where like he sits down to take his pants off and also get naked so that he can get into his bedclothes. And you like that conversation continues to happen. It's really just excellently performed, but like B, really beautifully shot and staged in a really clever way that feels like very natural.
The vulnerability of the argument where she has the face mask on too.
Yeah,
that's the best scene.
Yeah, very, very, very much rooted in more realism than a lot of what we've seen and a lot of what we still see, right? Yeah. We don't see those little moments in a lot of things, but it speaks to the length of their relationship.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that this is reaffirming the patriarchy, because I do really love this movie.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm same.
Me making long excuses to be like, but it's good though.
Yeah.
No, it's authentic. It's real. Like in the world that it creates, it's logical and coherent, and it's highly stimulating to watch.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. Divorcee made me feel uncomfortable. This made me feel better.
Yeah.
I don't think that speaks to necessarily a good thing on my conscience, but
yeah, no, I think you're right is the thing.
Right. 2 more.
All right. So our next movie is Libeled Lady, which is a fast-talking, hijinks-forward rom-com that asks, what if newspapers trying to ruin someone's life was really funny, though?
Yeah.
When the paper prints a false story about rich socialite Connie Allenberry being a husband-stealing homewrecker, they're hit with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. To avoid a payout that would wreck the paper, editor Warren Haggerty hires former journalist and ladies' man Bill to temporarily marry his own fiancée, Gladys, and then entrap Connie in a new cheating scandal and force her to drop the suit. Comedy hijinks, like actually funny ones, ensue.
This is just a great screwball good time. I really had a good time with this one. I love the cast. We've got our star players from The Thin Man, William Powell and Myrna Loy, who, for whatever reason, they just have a chemistry unlike many actors we've seen so far. And we're really seeing Spencer Tracy spread his wings here as the newspaper guy who's so focused in on his job. And then poor Jean Harlow, this jilted forever fiance trying to keep up. And between the 4 of them, it's just a great romp. I really like this one.
Loved everyone in this.
Isn't the dad from It Happened One Night?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, it's just a series of people I love to see.
Yes. He also was, if you remember in Lady for a Day, he was the father-in-law.
Yeah,
Romero.
Yeah, you're right.
So he always kind of plays these same sort of silly roles and like just nails it. I don't know.
He's doing one job, but he's doing it so good.
Yeah, agree.
Not to jump too far ahead, but I do love that the resolution to this movie is like, we're not going to solve any problems. It's so funny.
Yeah. I think it's a very funny decision, but it was like, I still wanted to see a little bit more of it because of how abrupt it all was. But I really, really enjoyed this one. Laughed a lot throughout. I thought William Powell and Myrna Loy, always very fun, very funny. And Jean Harlow, surprisingly hilarious.
Yeah.
Like I loved her performance as well.
That part where like, so her fiance is telling her to marry another person and she's just housing martinis like at the bottom of the frame because she's sitting off to the corner and is just drinking one martini after another is so funny.
Love her so much.
How about when she tells her maid, it's my wedding day, and the maid's like, again?
I don't know if you guys caught this, but it was when she was being driven to try and like interrupt the like wedding or whatever was going on.
Too.
The driver's like, and next week East Lynn.
Yeah.
You know? And I loved that because I was like, oh, that's the joke. That's the thing. It came up.
It's like
so
we're
I love
from
when we
that
have
time
those little
period
moments.
now.
Exactly. We get that reference.
Yeah, I think Jean Harlow had some of the best lines, like you'd make your crippled grandma do a fan dance for that paper. I had to pause it after that one too.
Everyone has stuff that's so funny, and they just keep going though, because like Haggerty like is talking about when I think that some other newspaper failed, and he's talking about this other guy. He's like, they found his car gone over the ravine and a revolver in his hand. It's like, how did he kill himself?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, dude, you don't have to do both.
But like Powell and Myrna, when they're like, it's so incredible to me that they didn't have any kind of romantic involvement in real life. I mean, I guess it speaks to how professional they were, but it turns out, tragically, Jean Harlow died quite young. She was only 26, but she was in a relationship with William Powell around this time, which like you get that they're comfortable with each other, but there's something about that scene, like when they're out on the floating dock in the lake by their summer house. I don't know. I think William, not to give him credit, but he gives Myrna the space and the respect as an actress.
Yeah.
He's not in her face the way that I know some of us love Clark Gable, but he's just barreling over the people around him. Powell is very much a true actor in the sense that it's a partnership every scene.
Right.
And it's only successful when you respect each other.
Definitely. I think you nailed it. It feels like so collaborative.
Yeah. Great vibe. Impeccable vibes.
Fishing scene. He's not afraid to get physical, just like with that couch scene in The Thin Man. He's not afraid to look silly. Like there's a lot of male actors in this time period that would be like, I'm not doing that. I have an image to think about.
Yeah. He also like he sleeps on like a too small couch at one point. And then there's also a scene like when they're talking about how they have to get married, he's sitting on the desk, but he's sitting like crisscross applesauce style on the desk, like with his shoes and trousers on. It's very funny.
It's the same way that Katharine Hepburn is not afraid to look unassuming or silly or unattractive.
Yeah. The one scene that I also found really funny with him was obviously he's trying to pretend to be an expert fisherman so that he can convince Myrna Loy's dad that he's good at fishing. So the first day where he's ingratiating himself with this family to try to get his in, he's fully just talking to the dad about fishing. I was like, wow, he is out here seducing the dad instead. They're just talking about fish. Myrna is like rolling her eyes. And I was just like, but they also just have such great chemistry. You can see Walter Connolly, like he embodied that like genuine joy of like, oh my God, someone likes my hobby, you know, so well. I was like, I love this. I love this movie so much.
He's reading the books, he's shaving, he's going over the fish facts. I was like, this is not this man's first rodeo. He's got this cinched up. And then he gets to the table and it just falls apart.
Instantly. So funny. Love when a comedy understands the concept that comedy is really funny when you're like setting expectations and diverting them in like the most absurd way you can. All right. Anything else to say about Libeled Lady, which is a delight?
Yeah.
Delightful. Yeah.
All right. So our very last nominee this year is Three Smart Girls. This features the three daughters of a wealthy, long-divorced couple who are determined to stop their father's marriage to a gold-digging harlot and see their parents reconciled. The older daughters get a couple of boyfriends out of the deal, and the youngest daughter, Penny, played by Diana Durbin, whose success in this and other movies was credited with saving Universal Studios from bankruptcy, gets to do a lot of singing for some reason. Three Smart Girls walks so the Parent Trap could run.
True.
Yeah. That's literally my thought. I was like, oh, this is the predecessor of The Parent Trap.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also my very first note is obviously Big Opera at it again because it opens with her singing. Like
she
literally,
got some pipes on her.
She really does.
Back to Snow White. Is Diana Durbin? Apparently, she tried for the role of Snow White for Disney, the animated movie, but she was ultimately rejected because she sounded too mature. She was 14 at the time, but so it is crazy. But she does have like a very like developed professional voice.
Yeah.
I do think, again, I was watching this with my roommate, and she was like, she is too good of a singer to be acting during her singing sequences, which I think feels right.
Yeah,
like the
that's such a good point.
The movie's like jerked to a stop so that she can do like these admittedly like fantastic vocal performances, but like the whole movie like just stops to like bookend them in.
It's the singing version of Mae West's comedy in her movie, where I'm there to hear Mae West dance circles around men. I could care less about this movie. And if you're a singer and you like Penny singing, come for this movie. But the rest of the movie around it, could take it or leave it, personally.
So I actually really enjoyed this movie.
I did too.
I thought it was very funny. This got the biggest laugh out of me in a scene possibly out of any movie I've ever seen, but definitely any for the podcast. So it was the scene, you know how they like hire, like, I think he is actually a count, but he's very
like a penniless
useless.
Yeah.
Penniless fuck up. Yeah, exactly. Just drunk all the time. And so they hire him to pretend to basically seduce the woman who's trying to become their stepmom. And so in order to find the right person, because they're coordinating this with their dad's like assistant, one of the sisters is like, okay, have him hold this magazine under his arm, and that's how we'll visibly know who it is. And so of course there's like some mix up because he gets to the bar, and as a true fuck up, he goes to the bar and he's like, do you have any non-alcoholic options? And they list a bunch, and then he's like, ew, I'll take straight whiskey, which that got like a good laugh for me, but that's not even the biggest laugh. So that's just setting up the scene. So obviously this man's too busy getting drunk. He sees someone he recognizes, and it's very much like a, hey, like reunion sort of thing. They start drinking together, and then obviously like the meet cute love interest accidentally picks up the magazine. And so the sister sees him and she thinks that it's him. And that sets up the whole romantic kind of subplot there, where he just goes along with it because he thinks she's cute. He leaves the magazine on the chair. So there's this long, prolonged scene where we're seeing, you know, the sisters and the stepmom, the dance, trying to work their magic to like see if they can get this woman to fall in love with this quote unquote fake count. And then it cuts back at the end of that to the real count, who is still like laughing and drinking with his friend. And his friend's like, oh, let's go. There's like another thing that we need to go to. And then he's like, oh yeah. Oh, wait, like suddenly remembers that he had a job there to do, goes, looks around, sees the magazine, puts it under his arm, and it's like, okay, let's go. Like he gave it a try. He did the old college try. He's like, okay, I was here. I had the magazine, put it down, and like he leaves with his friend. That got such a cackle out of me. I was like, I love this man.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm the oldest of three girls, and the utter like shrieking hooliganism on display in this movie is deeply funny to me, because it feels like like you see a tiny bit of this in like that Little Women adaptation that we watched.
That was my thought,
but like
too.
not enough.
Yeah.
It was kind of my complaint.
Yep.
And otherwise, I feel like, especially during this period, you get a lot of like movies about sisters who are like not this frankly fucking annoying. Whereas like, I think if you have a strong aversion to this movie, it's probably because you find the girls annoying, which I think is fair.
Hit
However, I feel like it's also
but it's also like,
but it's also like so real, like the thing that happens in the beginning where one of the girls fully throws a rock at her sister and like damages something inside the house because she accidentally throws it through
painting of their dad. Yeah.
Like I had something literally like that happen to me as a child, where I threw something at my sister and completely obliterated something on a shelf behind her. Like
yes.
Or like there's a scene where the youngest sister she's picked up like these like penny dreadful magazines on the cruise over to New York, because they take a boat over, like, because it starts in like Switzerland or whatever, where they're living their little idyllic sailor outfit life. And then they go to New York. She picks up these like penny dreadful magazines that she gets taken away. And then she clearly finds another one. And they realize this because she calls, I can't remember what she calls like the guy who is pretending to be someone, but she's like, oh
yeah, she uses a term.
Yeah, she uses like, he's like some two-timer, like good for nothing essentially. And there's a moment where they squint at her, and then one of her older sisters is like, she's found those magazines again, look under her pillow. And they like find the magazine, and there's all this screaming, wrestling, and the oldest sister gets it and she just flings the magazine off screen. It's so funny.
Yes. So watching this, because I only had a brother, but it absolutely, I was like flashbacking to two of my cousins who are sisters, like some of the fights that they would get into over stupid stuff and their dynamics. And I was like, this really captures so many of those like stupid sister shenanigans, where sometimes there's literal like roughhousing over nonsense, and you'll have one crying about it or whatever. But then it's just like, it's literally not that. Everyone calm down. Yeah. You know? So I thought like I could see how they were annoying, but it's also just like, Yeah, like think about being a parent to that, right?
Oh
yeah, sometimes it is going to be annoying where you're just like, oh my, can you please stop? But, they're going through a lot over there.
I get what you're saying. I think, this is a year of male gaze movies, and I think I got a little spoiled with male gaze with a lot of the other movies. And this movie required me to try to enjoy a different life experience. But when they get to yapping over each other, it's just like it starts to feel like TV static when they're all hitting the same octaves. And
I think that's fair. It's also
that's part of
true.
But that's also so accurate. Yeah, exactly. And so, watching this, I was like, this had to have been written by a woman. And it was. So I was just like,
amazing.
Yep, this totally tracks.
Well, I'm glad you guys
those are very real. Very real dynamics. The one thing that also made me laugh, okay, so the dad's assistant guy that kind of helps them with everything, I think the actor's name is John Dusty King. First of all, he came on screen and I was like, wow, this man, he's got star material. But then he starts talking. He only had 2 volumes. There was either sounding like he's radio shouting, like announcing things, or like the whispering scene, which was really funny. But all other times, he delivers his lines in the same exact way, no matter what is going on. And so that made the scene where they were talking about their plans to separate the dad from like the gold digger woman so funny to me, because like they had just left the room and they're like, so anyway, we're gonna hire this count guy. And I was like, hello?
I was
inside voices. But yeah, I don't know. It was fun. It was definitely a fun movie to me.
Like I fully took no notes, but I just had a good time.
Do you guys think though it's problematic in setting not good expectations for children of divorce to dream and fantasize about bringing their parents? Like I'm just wary of that,
like Parent
theme.
Trap too.
It feels very Hays Code, I'll say that.
I think there's something to be said for that.
Conservative sounding to me is what I'm saying.
I think there's something to be said for that. I do also think that, unlike The Parent Trap, which I think really plays into this, to this movie's credit, kind of the ultimate reason that the dad breaks up with his gold digging girlfriend, which incredibly fortunate that she did actually turn out to be evil and not just incredibly nice, because they kind of were like, we got to stop her before we cross. Anyway, but the reason he puts off his marriage is because he's worried about his children and has kind of like reconnected with his kids and kind of clearly wants to be in their life. And the movie ends with, yes, the mom has arrived from overseas, kind of to seem like, frankly, pick up her children. They like meet, but we don't necessarily see them like get back together or get married or anything like that. We just see her get off the boat
Penny in the middle, like with the shit-eating grin, like I did it.
Yeah, which we don't know, like we don't see them get remarried or anything like that. It just ends with them like re-meeting each other. So
feel bad for that mother. 10 years of her life to go back to a guy who screwed her over. He's probably going to screw her over again.
There are 2 sequels to this. I don't know what the plots are. Nor am I like necessarily really going to go out of my way to watch them or anything. But agree that it's like they likely got back together, but unclear. Like maybe they're just getting back together in the sense that they're going to both be there for their kids, rather than like a whole romantic thing. Who knows?
One last question from me, and then I'll stop shitting on the movie you guys like. How
Which is like, how does it feel to get to do that? We always do this.
This is novel. Like, you shit away, Jake.
Trying to shoot holes in your...
Enjoy your moment. Enjoy it.
Well, how old are the girls supposed to be? Because the guys who are pursuing the 2 older girls, they look like, I don't know, mid to late 20s, early 30s. And these girls look and act like they're 15. So I don't know if it's like a time thing or it was
I think it's a styling thing, and also because of like how they're acting with each other, and that's kind of how you see them for the most part. I did look this up, and like the middle girl who gets with like the guy who is secretly young. Still rich. Yeah, she does look really young, but she was like 18 at the time of the movie being filmed. I am betting that the actor is also like probably in his young 20s. But it's just like every man styling at that point is like every man looks like an adult.
Yeah, because they're like all working versus the girls are still, they're just living in Switzerland, singing on lakes and throwing rocks at each other. So very, very different lifestyles. But yeah, so I think the youngest one is supposed to be like 14, 15. And then the other two, we'll call it, are like 17, 18, 19, somewhere in that range.
Old enough to go to a nightclub.
Yeah, exactly. And they have the scene where it's like, oh, the adults are staying up late and they only send the opera singer, Deanna Durbin, up to bed, where it's like, you can't stay up this late, you know, like you're still a kid or whatever. There was one other little moment in here that I wrote down that I thought was really funny. And it involves, that middle daughter who has like the romance with the actually
That was
rich
my
guy.
favorite storyline.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. So she thinks that he is obviously the good for nothing alcoholic count who is penniless because of his bad decisions. And she thinks that his only income comes from them. So there's a scene that she walks in where he was about to buy a ring that was $7,000, which is the equivalent of $160,000 in today's money. So he wanted to get it for her. So that's what he was buying. And she's like, wow, you were about to swindle that man. You don't have that kind of money. And he's still trying to pretend to be poor. He's like, well, I was going to do $1 down. You know, every day I'll pay $1. And she's like, $1? Oh, wait, for 7,000 weeks? And then it's just like very, very funny. So I just liked, I don't know, I liked that subplot.
Yeah.
That was the best subplot. And
yeah, it was cute. It was a cute subplot.
I don't know. I don't think this is a spectacular movie. I think it is probably crazy that it got nominated for an Oscar, but it did apparently save Universal Studios, and I had a great time. So thanks, Diana Durbin, for giving us Jurassic Park, I guess.
yeah, true. Directly thanks to her.
So you can blame her, Sarah.
Yeah, for all of my nightmares, but it's still a great movie. Still love it. The Three Stooges apparently did a short parody of this in 1937,
Delightful.
which was called...
there's a movie I can watch.
Yeah, Jake made this movie. So it's called Three Dumb Clucks, and it's basically the Stooges escape from jail in order to save their father from gangsters and a beautiful gold digger. So directly kind of just ripped on this movie, which I love. Love everything about that. So
amazing. All right, that's all of our nominees.
That is all of our nominees, which leaves only the Best Picture winner for this year, The Great Ziegfeld, which I really hope is about a magician, but I feel like I'm going to be disappointed.
I haven't looked it up until you just said it.
Me neither. Idea. We're going to go in blind. So stick with us as we take a short break, and we'll be back to tell you all about it.
Okay, folks, I hope you are ready for some glitz and glam, because we are going to talk about one of the most extravagant movies we've maybe watched so far. I am talking about The Great Ziegfeld, the Best Picture winner for the Oscars in 1936. This is a film that stars podcast favorites William Powell and, on the title sequence anyway, Myrna Loy, although she comes into the movie a bit later. But anyway, I'm going to start off by giving us an overview. I'm going to try to keep it streamlined. So the movie opens up in kind of a carnival-like setting in a couple of years before the year 1900. So we're at the very end of the Gilded Age, the 19th century. We're introduced to two kind of competing rival talent agents / show producers. One of them is named Ziegfeld, and the other one, Billings. He's played by the Wizard of Oz. So I'll either call him Billings or Oz for the remainder of this description. So they are across the street from one another. They're both hawking their talent shows. Ziegfeld has the world's strongest man. He lifts up mock weights with women inside. And then on the other side, Oz, he has some belly dancers. So they're hawking their shows, asking for passersby 10 cents, 50 cents, see the show. And in the very beginning, Ziegfeld is really struggling to keep up. It seems that sex is really selling, and everybody wants to see the belly dancers. This kind of sparks an idea in Ziegfeld's mind to start kind of scouting other people's talents, and particularly in finding very talented women to help turn into starlets and to help him aggrandize his shows. But we find out a little bit about Ziegfeld after we leave that setting. He's actually the son of a very renowned music impresario and music institute school teacher, Ziegfeld Sr. Ziegfeld Sr. very much wants for his son to get into the family business of teaching music and kind of staying on the straight and narrow. But Ziegfeld is very much committed of making his own way in the world and making a stamp on the entertainment business. We then move on to Ziegfeld kind of scouting out through both Europe and the United States, trying to make his way in the entertainment business. As I referenced a moment ago, he gets very good at finding young starlets, young talent, particularly talent that Billings finds, his old rival, and stealing that talent out from under him with his charm and with his smooth words. So that leads us to a young French performer named Anne, who has a very entertaining kind of silly performance, and Billings, his rival, is very excited about. So Billings is right on the cusp of signing Anne to be the new headliner of a show he has planned, when, of course, Ziegfeld interjects, gets a meeting with Anne before, and it turns out he understands very quickly that as a performer, she is very much a dramatic, maybe not totally emotionally stable person. So he is able to kind of massage her ego and pretty quickly get her under his thumb. So he's got his star act who he brings to New York, and they're at first not so successful. I think American audiences are not quite sure what to make of this foreign act. So he gets this idea to just kind of spread publicity about Anne. So he leaks to the paper that he's buying her all this milk every day because she must bathe in milk. This embarrasses her, but it creates this persona of this extravagant diva that quickly spreads through the headlines, and her show becomes very big. Her dream of becoming a big star finally starts to come true. Well, not only do they become professional partners, but Ziegfeld also marries Anna, and they have a great run of success with her show. Well, eventually, Ziegfeld starts to get bigger ideas. Yes, maybe he's made his mark on Broadway and the show scene, but he wants to become truly a renowned name for history and entertainment. So he starts to branch out and develop new plans. His most ambitious may be one called Ziegfeld's Follies, which is set to be this super extravagant showcase, the glory of American women. He just wants to showcase beautiful costumes, beautiful sets, and take audiences away. So we're treated to the actual realization of that ambition. We get to see some truly incredible stage performances. This is really when Ziegfeld hits his stride. Sure, he's borrowing money from every costume designer and set designer to make his shows happen. He's way over leveraged, but he has a vision, and somehow with his charisma and manipulation is able to consistently see it through. So things don't stay perfect forever. Ziegfeld gets into an illicit relationship with a new up-and-coming star, only she's a little bit unstable too and has a propensity to get drunk before her performances, which creates some embarrassments on some opening nights and ultimately leads to Ziegfeld's wife Anne discovering them in an embrace behind scenes when he is trying to get her ready to go out on stage. Naturally, Anne is aghast by this, and they end up separating and ultimately divorcing. Ziegfeld moves on quite quickly from that. He shortly finds a new infatuation. Finally, we're introduced to Myrna Loy's character, who plays Billie Burke. She's another find of Ziegfeld's old rival Billings. We're also treated to Anne, his now divorced wife. She is alone and regretting her decision to leave Ziegfeld, but she loves him so much she pays him a call to say how happy she is to see that he's gotten with Billie and the two of them have become married. So he has a baby with Billie. It seems like maybe he's finally settling down a little bit. They have a young daughter, a big house. He's at the height of his success. He's got one hit play after another. He's in fact doing so well that when his young daughter expresses an interest in the circus, he deigns to design a whole show oriented around a circus performance for his daughter. So that's kind of like the height of his power and extravagance. But things take a turn pretty quickly. Thinking about the future, he opts to finally invest some of his profits from his plays in the stock market. And wouldn't you know it, he does it right before the financial crash of 1929 on the start of the Great Depression. So quickly, we see his fortune go up in flames. He keeps putting out plays, but none of them are as successful as they used to be. And within a couple of years, he's truly down and out on his luck. We see him in an apartment. Very apparent that he's not only depressed, but he has some type of major ailment. His wife has had to go back into work on the stage. He's not the man he used to be. Billings comes to pay him a visit, kind of reminisce with him about the past, and talk about maybe opening up a new play in the future if they can get the money together. But of course, Ziegfeld knows they are past their prime. There's no way they'll be able to get financing again. So we have a very private moment with Ziegfeld at the end as he's sitting in his chair. He says, "I need more steps. I've got to get higher," he says to himself as he starts to drift off and ultimately pass away after a life of great striving, as I say, manipulation, cajoling, ambition, lying. But man, did he put his name out there. Very emblematic, maybe, of the times, the 1920s, before that big crash. But that's a little breezy overview. But why don't you guys talk a little bit about your thoughts on this movie?
It's fine.
I feel like the most lackluster response for the most visually extravagant movie that we've seen.
Well, okay. No, the set pieces, I think, like the actual stage set pieces are really fantastic in terms of like mechanical design and that kind of thing. But outside of that, I actually don't think that this movie looks particularly good or interesting.
Okay. I hope you mean barring the costumes and stuff as well.
Yeah. No, like barring the costumes.
Okay, you're including that. Okay.
Like all the huge set pieces that they do, they're like, I don't know, 4 big, huge like stage set pieces where it's supposed to be Ziegfeld's Follies, like the actual performances that we're seeing, right? On stage.
Yes.
Like those are all spectacular and wonderful and very cool, but everything around them is like another boring, like 1930s biopic.
Yeah.
You know, individualist dude who is making his way in the world for better or worse. You know, I don't know. It was fine.
So this was yet again another gowns and this time fashion parades by Adrian. And this man, oh my God, the vision, the spectacle of all of it surpassed anything he'd done before. It apparently took 250 tailors and seamstresses 6 months to sew all of these costumes that he designed for the film. It was like 50 pounds of silver sequins, which if you think about how light one sequin is, you know, so it's like, good Lord, how many actual sequins is that? So it was absolutely just visually spectacular. But same with you, Abby. Like, I really felt every minute of this film. I felt like we were watching this man's life in real time.
Yeah, I really agree with you guys in the sense that I'm thinking about this movie in 2 different veins, right? Because on the one hand, this is the story of kind of the poster child for the Hays Code era of the capitalistic man exploiting, cajoling, manipulating women, workers, lesser capitalists all along the way to create a literal Tower of Babel to his own ambition. Probably the most impressive stage scene in the movie is a big Tower of Babel that the camera circles around in probably a 5-minute long take where we see different performers and different costumes going up to the top of the tower. So this man's ambition is unmatched. He's not really a good person. He's lying to everybody at every turn. But the actual spectacle of the performances and those scenes on the stage, to me, was so engaging that it kind of made it worth it in the end. But I am so frustrated that they took 2 of my favorite actors, Bill Powell and Myrna Loy, and number one, clipped Myrna Loy's performance feathers to the point where she's not really a fully fleshed out character in this. She is just an appendage of his journey. And then, you know, because he doesn't really have an opportunity to be a witty character in the way that we've seen till now, he's just this driven, ambitious guy. I don't feel we get that full personality of Mr. Powell that I'm used to.
I like that you called him Bill.
Yeah,
like
me too. Like you knew him.
On best friends.
I would love to see like a remake of this movie, although I think it would be hard because now no one knows how to film a musical where you see like people's feet. Not to get too Gary Cooper about it.
I was like, Gary?
I was going to say.
Is that you?
But I would like to see the remake of this that, treats its women characters like the fact that they were actual like women with careers. Like Anna Held had a long career after she left Ziegfeld, and Fanny Brice was a famous comedian and is the inspiration for the Broadway play Funny Girl. And
yes. Okay, I'm so glad because I was like, man, she's really giving me Funny Girl with Barbara Streisand. Turns out like,
there you go.
Okay. Yeah. This makes sense. It all comes together.
I don't know what it is about these older biopics where it's like every woman just shows up to bat their eyelashes at the central dude. I mean, it's a joke that there's like the supportive wife character in every biopic, but man, they truly set that standard early. But I also want to see the remake of this because apparently, so there was the Ziegfeld's Follies, and then also like they would have after shows at the rooftop or whatever, and that allegedly involved a lot more nudity. And so yeah,
got wild.
Yeah, got crazy. So, and there were rumors of like all the showgirls being also let's say available.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just so clean and tidy, and it's weird that the main character like has like no actual growth. It's very strange. I mean, like if you chopped off the very last minute, like that's, where he dies. like nothing happens to this man.
The only thing that didn't work out was choosing to invest his money right before the crash. All of his money. Everything else, though, it was always like, oh, he's just full of great ideas that seem to always work out in his favor. So that was at least the one time where it's just like big oops.
The timing of that is interesting. Because like I mentioned earlier, this is the same year where there's a bit of a counterattack on the New Deal and the new way of doing things. And this almost kind of feels like a coping mechanism psychologically, this movie, for all those titans of industry and capitalists of American economy who, they were just lifting everybody's boats up with their ambition up until 1929. Something strange happened. And then everything went up in flames. But God damn it, we're still good people, and we still did a good job for America. Or at least that's what Ziegfeld's butler told him right before he kicked the bucket. So it all is very on the nose, I will say. And I just want to circle back to what you said about the supportive wife comment, because it leads into a big discussion I want to have about this movie, about the way women are portrayed. Probably the most egregious supportive wife instance is when Ziegfeld is starting to fall down on his luck towards the end of the movie, and Myrna Loy, his much younger wife, can see that he's losing some of his luster, and she takes him aside and says, when I met you, you were a ladies' man. You were you never looked back. You never doubted yourself. You just went forward. Well, all the jewels you've ever given me, you can take them back, sell them, pawn them, give them to someone else. Just get back out there and do what you need to do to be successful, aka sleep around, do some more crazy financial shit, but I trust you. And it was just like, damn, this is not making her look particularly, impressive in her own right. But the way he interacts with women is gobsmacking, I thought, in this movie.
I will say, though, just knowing that Billy Burke essentially was involved in both the writing and a lot of the portrayal of both Ziegfeld and herself in this, and specifically made the point to play down his infidelities. I feel like the way that the character is written in a way that we don't really like, right? Where it's just like, oh, she's just this ultimate enabler of him, and it feels very Hays Code, seems to be probably just how she actually was in reality. From kind of the bits and pieces that I got here.
I feel like I can forgive it more if like Louise Rayner, who I think does actually a really excellent job as Anna Held, his first wife, if her character wasn't also treated in a very similarly like offhanded way. Everyone feels shallow in this, but the women feel especially shallow.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I was speaking more specifically just to the doting wife kind of trope that we have here, which seems to be reality. But no, I don't like the way that women were handled in this film. And it's kind of a shame because I feel like Louise Rayner's performance, I think she won for Best Actress, actually. It reminded me a little bit of the end of Broadway Melody in year 2 of the Oscars, where, she's kind of like going through this heartbreak and then smiling, pretending everything's okay as she makes a phone call sort of thing. So those performances felt very similar, but the context of her character in this was just like, okay, like everything is just about this man in this movie, which I guess it is the title, but whatever. Fun fact though, Louise Rayner is the longest lived star from this period, from classic Hollywood. She died in 2014.
Holy shit.
So, yeah, I think she was like 104.
Wow. That's crazy.
Incredible.
She was staring at a photo of William.
Exactly, as she went.
I thought the movie was going to do something cool when he goes to the burlesque show and seeks out this woman who he hears about, who is very funny and talented performer, Fanny, but she's not like a drop dead gorgeous in the way all the other women he seeks out are. But when she ultimately shows up to work for him, she's so excited. She's finally going to live her dream in a fancy outfit. He sees her on stage and he's like, stop the show. You shouldn't be dressed like that. We're going to put you in silly rags. And that's not the type of character you're going to play. And the insidious thing is it gets her to cry and it gets her to sing much better. So I guess maybe that was a directorial strategy on his part, but it's another instance of him objectifying, basically every person around him, in particular women. But that fake out kind of frustrated me.
You're kind of hitting on a point in terms of like you thought they were going to do something interesting with it and then it was basically there for one scene. I think that's ultimately kind of my problem with this movie is it doesn't feel like it really like develops or is doing anything particularly interesting with this whole character arc that we're supposed to be seeing of Ziegfeld's like ambition, right? Mm-hmm. It never feels more complicated than that, which is super frustrating for a movie that's 3 hours long.
Yeah.
It was long.
But you know what it did give us?
Oh no, I know what you're gonna say. Yeah.
Our very first minstrel show.
Like literal, not metaphorical.
No,
like,
they showed us, and it wasn't even just like, oh, here's a quick clip of, because obviously I'm sure this was based on the reality of the shows that he had produced prior to like his follies and stuff. But they did a full minstrel act. It was like a full 2 minutes of
sure was.
Just having us watch it. So that was rough. I did not like that.
I like the tap dancing, though. The tap dancing yokel, who he plucks from being a stagehand, just moving things. He does make stars along the way. I mean, you can make the case that it's good for people, at least for a period of time, until they are no longer needed, as happens to several women.
Yeah, I feel like he ultimately, at least as characterized here, like Ziegfeld just turned negging into like a financial strategy.
Literally. I don't think he ever paid that costume guy. That costume guy showed up and had the same fight with him on 3 different occasions over the course of like 2 decades.
I hope that they broke the Oscar statuette into 1 billion pieces and gave them all to the like chorus line girls because holy shit.
Yes.
Like credit where it's due. The concept of like trying to do elaborate dancing on like moving platforms is crazy.
Scary. Yeah.
It's harrowing.
Like legitimately frightening to watch.
I would love to see behind the curtain, no pun intended, but a 42nd Street sort of thing. How much practice, how much blood, sweat, and tears went into this? Because there are some dance sequences that, like y'all are saying, were just stressful to watch.
How about the doggies that they train to stand in one place for a while with everyone dancing around them, then to move up, sit in boxes and sit? I mean, at the end, they did a pretty good job.
I think the final act of that, though, should have been Skippy coming out from the Thin Man and doing some tricks. I think I would have liked that.
Asta.
I thought his name was Skippy. Oh, the actor dog's name, I think, is
the actor
Skippy.
You're talking about the dog in real life.
Yes, is his name Skippy. Put some respect on his name. Like,
God, he was the highest paid dog in Hollywood.
Yeah, come on. I was like, Astor. Oh, you mean his role as Astor?
He just really disappeared into that role, so I get where he's really, coming from.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, I forget.
He definitely did method.
William Powell was like, I'll do this movie, but the dog's got to come.
Oh, that would have been so great. It would have been the 3 of them, a reunion. Wow, now I'm actually upset that this didn't happen. But tying this also into some of the trivia that you'd given us, Abby, about Deanna Durbin saving Universal. Apparently, this movie, the rights to this like biopic, was initially sold to Universal, and they spent like 2 years working on it. And then because of their financial problems, MGM swooped in to buy some of the sets that they had made, the musical arrangements, the script, and then finish the movie. This was a very, very expensive movie, and apparently Universal did not have the finances to see it through. Which,
I'll be honest, guys. If it, like we're saying, this is kind of a problematic movie. I almost think of it as like the Hays Code Death Star in the male-female interactions. I would say San Francisco walked so that this could run in that respect. however you usually say it.
Howest ever.
Howest ever. If you cut out all the musical performance scenes and made that into a movie, it would probably be like a normal length movie. And it's what I would have wanted the Hollywood Review to have been. Like if it was all those performances, that would be a great movie. Right. But instead we're treated to gradually graying William Powell. Of course. Yes, we don't need that. It's a tale of two movies here, I would say.
It was the best of movies. Bringing it back was the worst of movies.
Damn.
Yes. That's what we do for our audience here. We're thinking meta.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can go to our recommendations because I don't have anything else to say unless you guys still do.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to say about this.
Nice. Okay, well, of the movies that we watched the 9th year of the Oscars, which ones do you think are still worth watching today?
Take it away.
Okay, so let's go down the line here. I just want to take a second because I feel like I didn't really hit as much as I wanted to on how much Tale of Two Cities touched me. I really identified strongly with Sidney, the British lawyer character. You know, he was this drunken nihilist, not living up to his full potential. And then he has the opportunity to meet somebody so perfect that it pulls him back down to earth and it gives his life some renewed meaning again. I admired the way that even though he clearly understood that they couldn't be together because of the circumstances, just the knowledge that she kind of existed in the world and was happy, and the idea that he had the opportunity to contribute tangibly to that happiness and to ultimately make the ultimate sacrifice to directly enable it. It gave his whole life up to that point meaning. And I just thought it was such a beautiful portrayal of love. And I don't know, I guess it's kind of out of left field for a movie that's otherwise not that impressive. But like I said, I got a little teary-eyed at the end of it. And, you know, it speaks to why that's such a classic novel. So I do recommend Tale of Two Cities. A lot of these other movies, it's going to be a little bit more of a mixed bag. I mean, Chrysanthemum, if you're out there and you're listening, watch The Story of Louis Pasteur because it's like right up your alley. I learned a lot about science. There's so much experimentation on animals. So I know you did that in the past. It's okay. I don't blame you. It's for a good cause. But Louis agrees with you, and he did a good job with that. And like Sarah said, Paul Mooney, oh my God, any opportunity to see him, even if he's not doing method and he's more representational like in this one, is still a lot of fun. Deeds Goes to Washington was cute. It was fun. I agreed with Abby that hokey ending scene got a little bit much. We'll watch it for a good time, but not as deep as some of the other movies on our list here. San Francisco, I did not like. Anthony Adverse is one of the most insane fucking movies I've ever seen in my life. And I would recommend watching it just to see, like, oh my God, I can't believe they made this. Dodsworth, man, I like that movie a lot. I felt challenged by it, but it was, like I said, the flip side of The Divorcee. This was probably my favorite movie of the year. The performances, like we said in the first half, oh my God, incredible. Really like that. And then we have Libeled Lady. What a fun, romping good time. Now, this is William and Myrna like I like to see them. Two independent-minded, fully fledged people going toe-to-toe on equal terms as characters in a movie. And Spencer Tracy and Jean Harlow bring it too. That is a fun movie. Just a nice screwball comedy, lighthearted, but in a way that'll make you laugh at the wittiness of it. Three Smart Girls. Sorry, I thought they were annoying. I'm sure they're very smart, but when they all start talking at the same time, it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. And that little girl is a good singer. I'm glad she saved the studio so they could keep doing all their fucked up shit in Hollywood in those days. But man, she just, by the end of it, I was like, stop screaming, Peggy. Stop screaming at the screen. But my two co-hosts liked it a lot, so take that for what it's worth. And then, like we just said, this Best Picture winner this year is kind of a mixed bag. Great glitz and glamour, very extravagant, but kind of a repeat of San Francisco in terms of the actual story content.
I think I'm going to recommend watching Three Smart Girls, Libeled Lady, and Dodsworth. If you only pick one, watch Dodsworth.
Okay, I think for me, strong recommendations for Dodsworth and Libeled Lady. Watch Three Smart Girls if you enjoy like silly sisterhood antics. I thought it was great. Anthony Adverse, absolutely watch.
No, don't do it. You only have so many hours on this earth.
No, but you know, if you
must suffer.
If you enjoy kind of doing your own like Mystery Science Theater 3000 type vibes and just roasting on this movie while you watch it, I think it's a great candidate for that. And then Story of Louis Pasteur, I actually enjoyed. I know you guys are against biopics and all sorts of stuff, but I don't know. I enjoyed it generally. And then so I can imagine if you're into science, even more so. But strongest recommendations, like I said, Dodsworth, Libeled Lady. The other ones only are like for very specific niche enjoyment. And then Great Ziegfeld, maybe find the wedding cake sequence somewhere on YouTube, but definitely don't watch the whole movie. Long. All right, y'all. If you were part of the Academy during the 9th Academy Awards, what movie would you have voted for as the Best Picture winner this year?
Dodsworth.
Yeah. Is there any argument here?
Yeah. I also agreed Dodsworth, which is a little bit surprising. At first, when we started The Great Ziegfeld, I was like, okay, this obviously there's a lot of work put into the design. It sounds great. It looks great. Let's watch this man's journey. But by the end of it, I was like, please let this movie end. I never want to see this again. So yeah, absolutely. Dodsworth.
It also takes like, something we didn't talk about is the fact that it takes, I think, almost a full hour and 20 minutes to get to the first staged sequence.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's not like you've got a lot of that to like carry you through the first half of the movie.
Right. They needed Anthony Adverse's film editor in here.
Well, I think it was a lot like Cavalcade in the sense that I feel like it spoke to an era.
Sure.
Whereas Cavalcade was talking about those first 30 years of the 20th century, say what you will about them. I think that this movie did a very good job of capturing the vibe of 1920s. The over-leveraged, insane spending, the glitz and the glam, covering up the rampant sexism. So in that way, I think it was important.
Right. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Next episode, we'll be looking at the 10th year of the Academy Awards, which is exciting because that also means we're going to do our next top 5 video bonus, which I always look forward to. But the nominees, if you're wanting to watch along or just get a sneak peek at some of them, we've got The Awful Truth, Captains Courageous, Dead End, The Good Earth, In Old Chicago, Lost Horizon, 100 Men and a Girl. That title makes me a little uncomfortable. Stage Door, A Star is Born, and then the winner of next year was The Life of Emile Zola.
A Star is Born.
Yeah, Star is Born. The first Star is Born.
Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga. Aren't you guys excited to hear about us talk about?
That's
that?
Right? That's that one.
That's what you're saying?
Okay, the other one that I'm kind of concerned about is The Good Earth, because that was like Pearl S. Buck's novel set in China, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they probably did not get Chinese actors for this. I always feel weird saying like comment and subscribe, so I never say it, but you should do that and then join us next time.
Please.